I am live. It's so funny to see you are live. I see a question mark. Hey, Charles. Does that mean you're here? It's hard to tell because when I first go on, I see the comments that anyone's posted on the post before we start. So hello, hello, hello. How are we today? I hope it's a good day and that we are having a nice day. I have a handout that I'm grabbing for you right now as we speak. So today, I thought we would do what we did last week, basically like to talk about kind of a follow-up to what we did last week. In talking about last week, we talked about, let me turn off my emails so they don't ding. We talked about writing off steam, right? And we talked a lot about writing. We talked about different ways to incorporate things when you're writing and different ways to kind of open up your voice and open things up. And I thought we kind of continued that theme. We've talked about this before, but this is, I want to go a little bit deeper. So it's a little bit rambly, I apologize. I've been deep into studying today, so my brain's in kind of a study hall mode. I've been studying compartmentalizing. It's fascinating. Not quite ready to teach it yet, but it's really interesting. The brain fascinates me, and how the brain protects us especially is fascinating to me, and all the things our brain does. And that's kind of what today's topic is in terms of, hang on, I want to, meant to put up, we are live, right? Okay. I can't see your comments. I'm in trouble. We do have a handout. There it is. So we're going to be talking about saying hello. Hello. Put your hand up to the voices in your head. Shake them. Hello, voices in my head. Shall we have a chat? This was inspired by a TED Talk, actually, that I think is phenomenal TED Talk. And there's Shereen. Hi, Shereen. Nice to see you. And I'll go back to my handout link. It's a phenomenal TED Talk, and I put it, so there's the link to the handout. When you get that, the link to the TED Talk is actually on the handout, but I'm also going to see if I can grab it here. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. Oh, hey, it worked. Nice. Okay. So I will put that up as well. This is a phenomenal TED Talk, especially for writers, because I believe, in my never to be humble opinion, that I can put this in here. Well, hey, Deb, nice to see you, and Joy's here as well, and Deb, yay! Good, good. Yeah, the voices in our heads. Let's see what we can do with them, shall we? Thank you, Joy, for putting that in the chat. And then this will be a little bit more challenging, but let's try this to put this in the chat. Oops. Her name is Eleanor Longden, and she talks about her battle with schizophrenia. And when I first heard it, I'm not gonna lie, I have mental illness. Actually, I have a long line of inventors in my family, and I also have some mental illness and schizophrenia in my family. And I feel like often there's a fine line, right, between that creativity and tapping into that creative spot. And then there's mental illness, and I don't mean to mitigate or downplay or, generalize or any of that. There are serious mental illnesses, and we should give those their due. But I think there's also sometimes, as she beautifully displays in this talk, where our sort of fear of our voices in our head and our fear of that we're crazy or mentally ill or something like that can extrapolate and actually grow into what may not have become that if we accepted ourselves a little better. And so that's why I feel like, well, hello, folks. I feel like I want to talk about this because I think that sometimes we judge ourselves. And so if it says like that, I don't know who you are, it says Facebook user. And there's a little thing that says StreamYard.com, or if you go to Facebook.com/StreamYard. Hello from Salem. I think that might be Cindy maybe. And Deb is here as well. Awesome. And now I lost my banner. So I'm going to give you that again so that Joy can grab it. And then maybe Joy, you could put it in the comments too. So if somebody wants to check out that TED Talk, I highly recommend that you do that because it's really fascinating. She does a really good job describing her journey into mental illness, basically, and then just a horrific road that she took until she finally kind of came to terms with it. And now she's helping others. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story. So I thought it would be it's a good topic, I think, in terms of, especially in times of strife, like we've been going through for so many different reasons right now. I think that there's room for us to be able to sort of look at the different things that are going on in our lives and the different voices that are coming up that might not be as familiar right now, because there's so much going on. There's voices of fear, and there's voices of things that we're all experiencing right now that are a little bit unprecedented, I feel like. And so it seems like just a good thing to talk about. Hang on, let me find the link again. I lost it. Oops, sorry. Fighting with my computer and losing. So I feel like with everything that's going on, and I'm seeing like a lot online, I'm seeing people argue, and I'm seeing just kind of more activity, and I'm seeing people that are saying things that are surprising to me from people that I know and don't know, and just there's all kinds of words happening right now. And so if you're seeing that, out in the world, anything I see out in the world is, in my opinion, a clue that internally it's tenfold internally. Whatever people are willing to express, that's the little tip of the iceberg that they're willing to kind of spew out, which is why we did, writing off steam last week, is that to try and get some of that out. And so I feel like when you see these outbursts, whatever you see is really just a tiny indication of all the things that are underneath it. And so that's why we talk a lot about subtext. It's also, as a writer and as a reader and as people who create stories in the film industry, the better understanding we have of that, tsunami of emotion that's underneath the little blip that we see, the better our writing and our reading and all of it will be, our storytelling will be, the more people will relate, because we'll have layers of what's happening underneath. And so that's why I will always kind of come back to that, if that makes sense. Hold on, I lost my hand up. I got it, because I clicked on the link to the TED Talk and it made me lose the handout. So if you click on that link, you'll have to enter your name and email. And the reason we do that, like I say every week, is so that we can follow what you're clicking on, and that gives us kind of an idea of what people like to talk about. And this is a popular topic. Whenever we do things about the voices and voicing your opinion and voices in your head, we get good response from that typically. And so it seemed like a good time to sort of talk about this. And so when you're kind of looking, and there's a handout where I'm going to kind of walk you through this handout, and when you think about your voice as a writer, or when you're reading a screenplay and you're going to write a coverage or book report about that screenplay, and you're needing to give some kind of feedback on it, sometimes it can be hard to come up, with a way to help someone figure out what their voice is and figure out, where they might go to get a deeper, better perspective of something, or if the dialogue is what we call on the nose, meaning it's just kind of predictable, we know what they're going to say. And there's a good thread in here in the Facebook group too about subtext, and someone was saying that not all subtext not all lines need to have subtext. And we come from the perspective, that's absolutely true. I'm not going to argue that. However, as readers, we are always looking for that hidden gem, that deeper moment, that deeper thing. And so we want to be able to know how to get to that deeper moment. And then we make the choice as to whether we need to do that, as opposed, it's like, all the rules, and and rules is a hard word for it because it's so subjective. So there's all kinds of ways that people use all of the different tools that you have when you write. Some people say it's 3 acts, it's 5 acts. There's so many different ways you can write. Some people say everything needs to have subtext. Some people say, no, you don't need subtext. There's so many different ways that you can go. So we've tried there's no way we could teach it all. So in general, we pick our position, that from my experience reading thousands of screenplays with lots of production companies, it's always based on what I was told by producers that they wanted, what I see the most, what got me recommended for more jobs, what kept my career moving. All of the reasons that I've put what we believe into what we believe is because I think it will help you more. That's why I'm choosing all of the things, the tactics and the ways that we're going about it. The whole intent behind it is it will open more doors for you. That's why we're taking it. It's not because I'm trying to be stubborn and I just think it's my way. I mean, I do have my opinions. Like I don't like voiceover, but I also say, I joke about that a lot. However, the voiceover in certain films is phenomenal. Weatherman, I use that one a lot. Well, Charlie Kaufman, but I'm about to say Charlie Kaufman, Adaptation. There are times, and there are even films where voiceover comes in and out and it's sweet and it works. It's not the rule. From when you read, with the voiceover that you see in the movie theater is often different than the voiceover you'll read when you're reading 1,000 scripts. So I want to veer young writers away from using voiceover because it becomes a tool to fall back on, as opposed to using voiceover, especially in an adaptation, to tell the story. And that's what's so beautiful. Adaptation is required watching for screen readers because he does such a good job at adapting that book and using the voiceover from the book coming out of the characters in different ways. Really geniusly done. And so sometimes in an adaptation, it's really hard to get the voice of the book without doing voiceover. I understand that. So, but I veer people away from it because it's a very common thing that you see in young writers. And it's because they don't know how to write a scene between two people. And so they just want you to have the message and they just want to give it to you. And so here it is down your throat. Okay. I get excited whenever I talk about voiceover, which is why I take such a hard stance on it early on. And then everybody goes, wait a minute, what about this movie? And yes, there are some exceptions to every rule. And there's some famous voiceovers, there's like lots of them that are great. And I love it when you hear, I like Chasing Amy, the way they use voiceover, and that is very unique and very, it's a good way to show different people's perspective because they show the character saying the words, even though it's filtered through another character's mind. Genius. So there are ways it works. Didn't mean to go off on voiceover, but you're a voiceover actor. Into this, so great, totally different thing. Like a voiceover actor, that's totally. We're talking cartoons, or whatever commercials. I'm talking about using voiceover as in a screenplay, as a way to get the story across. So if you're coming across a screenplay and it's full of voiceover, or whatever, and there needs to be some interaction between characters because it's not a book. Just saying, it's a screenplay. These are some of the tools that you can use as a reader to help a writer pull from things that will work. These are also tools that you can use if you're writing your own screenplay. And I want to kind of go through where can you find voices and then as a human, I want to help unleash those voices in a welcoming, safe space. So to understand that I think all people have a lot of conflicting voices. And, we have I was thinking Fred Flintstone with the, good guy, bad guy on his shoulder. We do a lot of this internal dialogue, a lot of this internal arguing. There's I should have, could have, would have, all of that, those kinds of thoughts. But most of us, I think we're not raised, for one thing, ever as a child you see kids playing with imaginary friends and they put words to the voices and they pick up their little action figures or dolls or whatever and they talk to each other. Where are those voices coming from, right? They're internalizing something and it's coming out here. That's what I want you to do. I want you still to be able to tap into that ability to take those voices and apply them very tangibly to something, kind of like kids do. Hey, Jane. And I also love, and I know this is a development thing with children, where when my boy was really little, he would look at we'd read the same book over and over, right? And then he would look at the book and he wasn't even really talking yet, but he would read it, right? He would turn the pages and be like, "Ah, ah, ah, ah," and he was imitating this idea of reading. And even in that, I could see his little voices forming. And it was so beautiful, right? And so, but then we're kind of shh, there's too much shushing that goes on in our world anyway. And so then our voices are told to, hey, be quiet, keep your voice down. And the only voice that we hear that is free are the voices of children or the voices of someone who has a mental disconnect in some way, and they're not guarded anymore. Everybody else is like constantly told when you can and can't speak. Shh. It's all just so that we'd like to try to unlock some of that, at least in a safe space where you can start to listen again. And I think we're just taught, after a while, we sort of lose our ability to listen to that voice. And we come into adolescence and we start to become adults, and we've sort of lost that voice. It's still there. And so if that voice is not incorporated into our general daily life, I feel like that voice comes out sometimes in inappropriate ways. Sometimes it comes out in pain in your body. Sometimes it comes out in depression. Sometimes it does turn into mental illness because it hasn't been given a space, a safe space to begin with. And especially if you were raised in any kind of a repressive situation. So often someone will come into adolescence and your hormones change. And sometimes they always, I mean, you hear a lot that adolescence and puberty can be a trigger for mental illness. I've heard that before. And I think in part, it's because you're coming into, and I'm no scientist or doctor, this is just my opinion, but you're coming into this place where, I mean, it's wacky enough already. Like there's so much going on that's so hard to figure out. And I really feel right now for kids, kind of ages, a friend of mine were talking about this the other day, from, ages 13 to 25, I really do feel like the COVID thing is really hardest for that age group. It really is. And we can whine and moan and complain. And there are, I don't mean to trivialize, there are people that are really struggling financially, jobs, that kind of thing. But that age group with this particular thing, that's really difficult, right at a time where they're, just starting their lives and they're starting to be social and they're starting to get out, and suddenly they can't do that. It's going to create some angst that they're just not, we haven't really been equipped to handle or deal with. And so I kind of felt like it was an important topic for us to kind of look at and think about. And then when you're dealing with your children and you're frustrated and they're frustrating you, and it's like to kind of have this understanding of, wait a minute, hang on, maybe we should talk on a deeper level about what's going on, because I know, we're trying to share a space and you're not used to this. There's all these things that are shifted and changed right now, but that thing doesn't get addressed often. So, Marcy, you're so, and often voiceover is the beginning and opening of a screenplay, and sometimes that really works. Just make it good. Better be good. So I kind of wanted to, put this out there. And so as you either talk to your children right now, this would be a great handout to do. Hey kids, let's do some homework right now and see what they're feeling and thinking, so that they can get more in touch with it. So that if, like in this TED Talk where she talks about early on, she says, and she even says it as an adult, it makes me sad. She says, I made my fatal error and I told my friend. And that's so sad that she's seeing that as an error in her TED Talk. And to me, that wasn't the error. It just was unfortunate, the reaction of the person she first told. And then unfortunately, it was the reaction of most people that she told, that they were horrified. Instead of, there was no openness to what might be happening. It was all just like, you're going nuts, whatever. So, and I think people can have that sort of knee-jerk reaction and not embrace the creative side. And I think I was raised in a very open, creative household, a lot of chaos, but there was an openness to the idea of creativity, which I think helped. And a sort of oddly, I wouldn't say pride, but there was like oh yeah, I got a lot of crazy in our family. Like it was just like a natural thing, because we have so many inventors. We have so many people on my father's side of the family that were imprisoned and jailed for inventing things. And like a lot of stories like that in my generational history. So because of that, I think I had a little more open, and yet I have a cousin who was institutionalized. So it had its limits even in that. So it does become this idea of, can we embrace all of the voices in our head and see them as thoughts? They're just thoughts coming from whatever. And so I wanted to kind of break them into different categories. So if you're having some mental blocks about storytelling, this is a great wealth of tools to dig into. And it's one of my favorite topics because it's just, to me, it's not talked about enough, and it's beautiful and creative and lovely and terrifying and just so many great things about it. So if you're having, look back on your family history. Like I just gave a little bit of that side of my family and how we sort of embrace that kind of creativity and inventions. And yet on the same time, thing of like people jumping off roofs and like all kinds of, to see if they could fly, that kind of thing in the 1800s. So what kind of history of family storytelling has come through your generation? What are some of the family stories that have come down? That's always a good way to sort of see how stories and voices are either muffled or released. And then my mother's side of the family was where she literally used to put her hand over my mouth on the regular, and often would be like, mm-mm. And that was in part because I'm a girl. And she was like, no. Shh, girls. That was kind of her way of, I don't know. That was her way she was brought up, I guess. So it was like, and I don't know too much on her side of the family. She didn't tell too many those kinds of stories. So it was a really interesting balance. So when you look about like, what are the stories? I will say straight yes. So what are your voices? Are your friends? So, well, it's good to listen to them too, though. I think sometimes when you don't listen, that's when you get into trouble, is when you like, better seen than heard. When you start to embrace them and let these things, and then also it's twofold. It's letting things roll off your back that you can have, and we can have, sometimes I think too, we have, and this is kind of what we talked about last week, is that sometimes we have darker thoughts and we're like, we don't want that to come down. And it's like, no, that's perfectly normal too. You have a little, people call it your inner child or whatever it might be. You have an ego and you have a sense of self. And sometimes that, when you get hurt, especially, it can be irrational. It can not make sense. And so we're so bent on, no, it's got to be this I'm a good person voice, that we squish it down, and then it comes out in all kinds of weird, wacky ways. So the more that we can kind of go, I see you, I hear you, let's get you, onto the page, or someplace where you can be free and not be tempered. And so when you're trying to figure out what your story is, think about like what mental games, positive and negative, did your family play? What kind of passive aggressive things were happening? Passive aggressive is one of my favorite, interesting, intriguing ways of communication in this world. And it's very, very common. And the martyrdom that can sometimes happen of when you say to someone, like we had a friend that used to be like, hey, can you swing by and pick me up on the way to the house? And this is living in LA, going across town to LA, and they lived in Long Beach. So it's not a swing by. That's like an hour out of your way. So that kind of like weird, and one of the best movies that does passive aggressive in a really great way is Diner. There's some really great scenes where he's like, well, if you're going that way, and he's like, do you want to ride home? He's like, well, no, if you're going that way. He's like, do say the words. It's like a really funny. You gonna finish that sandwich? Do you want my sandwich? No, I don't want your sandwich. But are you gonna finish it? Like that whole way of communicating, it's just fascinating to me. So it is like, yeah, you do need a place to download that uncomfortableness, right? And I think, the imposter syndrome ones. Yeah, I think it is good to set some boundaries for sure, especially the imposter syndrome ones. And then also, that's where writing comes in and thought downloading and getting those things onto the page, because sometimes you might even realize that they're not even your thoughts. Someone else, you're borrowing them from someone else's, your mother, your father, your brother, sister, whatever. So it is like, when you start looking at these ways of communicating, or people that do things like, oh no, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. And then later it comes out in another way where it's like, suddenly you're getting attacked. And I see actually this a lot when someone tries to help another person. If they just do it too much, you need to have relationships need to be reciprocal. And so if one person is constantly helping the other person, the person that is getting helped will actually start to attack after a while, because relationships do need this kind of give and take. And if one person is, and the person that's helping thinks they're helping, but really what they're doing is they're setting up this dynamic that's not equal. And so then the person that actually is benefiting from the help that this person is getting starts to become resentful. This is a very common dynamic that happens. And so by voicing seeing this dynamic too is so beautiful as a writer, being able to really witness that and see the dynamic. I mean, think about, I'm sure you've seen this in your life. This is like so common that you see in your life where someone starts to attack the person that's helping them. And so it's like, so if you are helping someone and if you do like to give, making sure that you also will receive, making sure that you find ways that you can receive things. And some people are not very good at receiving, that they're always want to give, and they're not very good at receiving. And so if you have a hard time receiving, it's being able to do that, being able to take help, being able to accept money, being able to accept a gift, accept a compliment. And actually, I got called out in my mastermind by this, where they complimented me on something. I said, well, we're all like that. And she goes, no, take the compliment. She was like, you just deflected that. You need to be able to receive it in order to be able to receive the other good things in your life. And so I thought that was really fascinating. I just love my group because they do that kind of thing all the time. So yeah, context. Yeah. So it is like when you get a context, for sure. So it definitely, you can start to use, you can start to see where it's all coming from. So I'm reading your comments. Hang on. Yeah, that's awesome. So you've gotten some great communication role models there. And yeah, a place to download on uncomfortableness is really good. Your father's very Catholic and a deacon now. That's really, but my father grew up as supportive of sense-making father. Oh, so expressed honestly his way to see the world as a man. So that was golden. Yeah, and for him to share that with his daughter is like choking me up. That's really very sweet. And it's really lovely. I'm very fortunate with my son that we have conversations, and like we're reading a book together, Let That Shit Go. Like he got me so we could read it together. Like being able to have those kind of conversations with your kids, I think is important. I think my son is lucky in that he has that in some people, not so much, but in quite a few people he could call and actually have a pretty, reasonable conversation with some depth to it. So, but really being aware of the negative and positive mental games, for fun. We played mental games, fun games too. We just read we read Lisa's screenplay, and her characters in her screenplay were doing all these fun games, which I really related to. They were mental games because my mother was a school teacher and we did that too. And so it was like, she did a great job at capturing that thing. So being able to look at that, and if you're reading a screenplay as a reader and you see that the voices you see a mother-daughter or father-son relationship, you can share the kind of things that Anna just shared in here. And you could share, your perspective, and you can kind of help them maybe form a relationship that might not be there by giving them some context and having them really draw from the people in their lives, or draw from, not just what they think it should be, actually draw from real things. And so also to be looking at as children, or even adolescents, I drove she's an adult now, but she was pretty old for this at the time. She was like 11, and she was having a whole conversation in the backseat as I'm driving around with her imaginary friend. And I was so glad that she was just, she was just chattering. She had been a chatterbox from day one, like most chatterbox kids. She's not now as an adult, but she was as a child. She just chatterboxed all the time. So cute, right? So, and I love that she felt comfortable just chatterboxing. And so, did you have imaginary friends as a child? Were they very succinct and real? And I had an imaginary friend named Karen. It's so hilarious now, right? But I mean, it's like very real. I had all brothers, and I think that's why it was like a sisterly kind of thing. It was like, I didn't have, some people say they have little monstery kind of, I think because I had so much creativity in my family, I tended to surround my writings and things were very practical. I chose in my life my best friends all throughout. I still have the same best friend I had when I was 19, but even in grade school, I had very grounded best friends, very practical best friends. And I think I knew I needed that, like someone to kind of keep me. I'm like the balloon, and I needed that. So, but I had the imaginary friend as well. So really kind of realizing and remembering and being, oh, right. And I think we lose that. So kind of coming back, to be able to bring those back in. And maybe when you're working with a writer, and if their script isn't whimsical enough, or it needs some kind of tonal thing to it, you can start taking them down this list and say, did you ever have this or that? And see if you can tap into something in them if you're working with a coach, so that they might tap into something that maybe they had forgotten about. And then reasoning. I love reasoning. You do reason with yourself. Do you walk around the house? Oh, that's are you that guy? I hear that from people in my family sometimes. I've heard that talking to yourself is a sign of intelligence. I'm going with that. Do you comment on things all the time? Are you reasoning? Are you making decisions in that way? And then, which kind of leads us into self-talk, which is a little bit different in that reasoning is usually, you're like reasoning, you're figuring things out, whereas self-talk is usually is just giving yourself a bad time, almost always. Do you talk to yourself, and then do you listen? And then what is the tone that you take, and really, really listening? We talked a little bit about this last week, but really listening to what are the words when you look in a mirror, what comes to you immediately? What are the first words that come to you when you look in a mirror? Do you look in a mirror? My mom could put on her whole makeup without once looking at herself in the mirror. It was never a very good job. And I'd be like, Mom. And I'd be like, look at your face. And it would be like, because she just did not, she just didn't want to do it. So when you look in a mirror, what's the very first words that come to your mind? And if they're negative, I want you to think about this moment right now. And I want you to go, you are amazing. You're amazing. Right into the mirror. If you're actually I have a monologue that I wrote of a character, and you don't know that they're looking in the mirror, and they're starting out by just saying, I'm going to tell you everything I think about you. And then they tell this person everything, and it's awful, and it's so brutal, and it's so great because I've seen both men and women do this monologue. I have two different versions depending on, and one guy just did it so brilliant, and people were just like, and it's actually, it gets a little more, the audience reaction is far more visceral for a man. It's interesting of him being a real jerk, and they're just, you can feel the audience just repelling away. And then slowly you start to realize that he's talking to himself and how brutal he's being to himself. And it's such a great shift watching the audience start to go like, wait, what? And start to realize, oh my God. And then at the very end, both characters do a little something, so you know exactly that they're taught, and then they're getting ready to leave somewhere, and they're trying to do this. They've been given the task of giving themselves a pep talk. And it's beautiful how the audience's response to that, because they think that the person is talking initially to someone else, and it's horrible. How could you talk to someone like that? And then when they realize, some people go, oh, and some people start laughing. It's a really interesting response. So, what kind of tone do you take? And then really what we talked about last week, that was thought downloading, and last week we talked about it in a much more of letting off steam, where just, let your freak fly, right? Like just be angry and throw it away. You don't have to. And then we kind of went down a path of people talking about writing letters and sending them to people. I actually recommend you write letters and then throw the letter away. You don't need to send it. Sometimes you just need to write it, and it will get it out of you. So that's more of the thought download idea. But even, the self-talk, getting that out of your head and onto a page, then you can see it, you can deal with it. The whole look method we talk about makes it a little bit easier to live. A red lit, easier to kind of comprehend. Hang on, let me kind of go back and see your comments here. Yeah, it's Family Secrets. I'm sorry, I can't see who that is. Your name isn't showing for me. So with Family Secrets, yeah, we had some of that too. And yet everyone knows, right? So it's like this weird family secret thing that everybody knows, but you're just not. It's not. That was part of my family, and so. And that's a big one. And sometimes family secrets can just be so devastating to you physically and emotionally. And then when you go on to try to have an adult relationship, it makes it much harder because you're not sure how to communicate anymore. So the more that you can kind of understand that that's what's happening, and yet family secrets in a screenplay work really well and can be a really good device as long as they're done in a way that's genuine, right? I love this. Don't you just love, Anna, watching the 5-year-old like work out the soap opera? I just love watching kids play with their toys and give them names and everything. So cute. I don't know about that, Doug. Not that you're generalizing or anything. No, Davis was really chatterbox. And so I actually, and then here's my bias, is that astrological signs, to me, I think some kids are more chatterboxy depending on when they were born. And I think it's, you know, I really, all of that is just kids are kids and they all come in a little bit different. And so some kids come in just chatterboxing and talking, and some, I think girls just verbally develop before boys in general. I'm really generalizing now, so they might be more talkative when they're younger. But once the boys start talking, then, you know, and I know that my friends has they thought there might be something wrong with him because he wasn't talking, and then they just sort of realized, because he's fine, he's an adult now, but it was like a house full of educators and all they did was discuss things, and the kid was just like, way too many voices going on here already, I'm just not going to say anything. So it just took him a while. Yeah, talking to the TV, got to do that. Yeah, helping you deal with bullies and racist kids in school. I mean, in bullies in general. Well, and in life, I mean, there's just so much that being able to get thought downloads, being able to understand, talking to the DV is a big one, right? Like totally. Yeah. Yeah, well, and I'm terrible, and I try, if I'm watching, you know, you should hear me when I watch TV alone. I will talk to the television when I'm alone. I try not to do that when I'm with people, because I'll give the story away, and so I try not to do that because I'm really like, it's bad. I'm that guy. So I really try not to do that when I'm watching with other people. But like, and my son and I were watching the one with Harrison Ford and Brad Pitt, and it's the IRA, and Brad Pitt's playing an Irishman, and he's not too bad. But so we, of course, started doing everything in the Irish accent. And then, because I absolutely love the Irish, I love accents of any accent. I love accents. I just think it's so, I love language, and hearing language, the same language in different accents. It's the greatest, right? I love hearing a room full of people in different accents. It's one of my favorite things. So he's getting to the very end of the movie, and James goes, "What's in the box?" And he says, "What's in the box?" with an Irish accent. Still makes me laugh. You get it, right? It was the wrong movie. It was the wrong movie, but it was funny. Hearing that famous line with that accent. Yeah, you'll tell the person, "Don't do that. Don't go in there." There's a really great insurance commercial during then it's Halloween. And they're like doing all the stupid things. Really funny. Anyway, so this kind of all comes down to my favorite part of this whole thing is like, okay, you find these voices, right? You find them. Let's go. You go on a little treasure hunt. We're going on a little like, we're playing hide and seek. That's more likely. Playing hide and seek, and we're looking in all those hiding spots that our voices are hiding in, and we're like, come on, let's go, come on. And you can do a whole exercise with this, and we're going to do this on another way. We did this in Reinvent with Evan Pagan. It was just brilliant. But and it was more to do with you in certain times of your life. And so we're going to do that on a different day. But so you go around, you find all these voices, the ones that are telling you that you're too this or too that or too tall or too fat or whatever. You know, you've got those negative voices. Then you have the ones going like, "I'm right. I don't know what's wrong with that person." That are sticking up for you. And you have your inner child going, "No, I don't want to. I just don't want to." And like the other day, my friend was going like, "Well, I guess I really could go, I could do this." And her whole time her head was shaking like full on no. I'm like, "You really want to do that?" She's like, "No, I could." And I go, "You realize your head is completely shaking no right now?" And then we all started laughing because she was like, "Well, I can go do it." So it was and that's such a beautiful thing, right? Like, she clearly, the voice in her head was going, "No, you're not doing that. You don't want to do that." And so we called her out on it. So it was really like that idea of, let's go through and we're going to dig them all out, right? And then we're going to allow them to live. And we're going to have a buffet. We're going to sit them all down at the buffet. We're going to get our minivan. We're going to throw them all in the car. We're going to get our Partridge Family bus. I'm totally dating myself. But we're going to throw everybody in the bus with us. We're going to sit them around our banquet table. And we're going to have a discussion. And all are welcome. And I want to hear what you have to say. And you get something to say. And you get something to say. And I want to hear from all of you. And you're all wonderful. And I love you. And you all have a place at this table. And having this like ability to do that. And you might even name them. You know, you could name them you can name them names that have to do with fantasizing things in your life. You can name them your super self, and you can name them the Phoenix, the one that keeps coming back up, and you can whatever, like it doesn't matter. You can name George and Fran and Sally, whatever it might be. As you let them out and as you give them a safe space and go, "You're fine, you're good, You're welcome. I love you. You're here. Join me. Come on, children. Have a seat. Like, makes me laugh and it makes me cry because we don't do this enough. We don't say, hey, insecure thing inside of me. We go like, shh, at least I do. And from what I can see, other people do too. This was as I started coaching and realizing, oh, this is not, I'm not a special snowflake. This is pretty universal. And so if we can bring these voices to the table, stick them in our Partridge Family bus, whatever it might be, and bring them along for the ride, one, I think you'll be happier in your life because you won't be compartmentalizing. And I can't wait to learn more about that whole thing. We talked about last time, remember, associating and disassociating, where do you think of a memory? Are you in it or are you watching it? So this is the same kind of thing. When you bring the voice of the Phoenix with you, where are you at whenever you think about that voice? Are you like, ugh, or are you right there? Come on, like, what's going on? And it's sort of your relationship with yourself and your emotions and the thoughts in your head, and all of that will make you such a better writer. And it will make you such a better reader, being able to communicate to a writer what will make their screenplay authentic. Because it's an understanding of, it's all cool. There's a fine line between creative and crazy. So embrace the crazy, embrace the creative, relax, you're good. And then you can go, okay, I got my character backpack. I love all these. I'm going to try on the Phoenix today. She's incredibly beautiful. I'm going to try her on. I'm going to walk around. We're going to be the Phoenix today. I'm going to try on my rainbow later. She's got a unicorn. She's going to slide. She's going to be like, oh, life is good. And then I'm going to get the troll out. She's got a little pink thing of hair. And she's like, and she's going to have something to say about this isn't fair. So it's kind of like Inside Out, right? Everyone loves that movie because it really does make you see the role of sadness and the role, they do it in emotion. I'm doing it more in a character study in terms of how that emotion might turn into a person. I mean, that's what they're doing too, but they actually call them by their emotional name. But, whatever rings true for you and whatever makes them the most present and gives them the most space and makes them the most present and whole in their own magnificence, so that you can sit with them and be like, okay, in this moment, I really need to hear, what does the pink troll have to say? All right now, Phoenix, can you step up? I need to hear from you right now. So you can call on the voices that you need, both when you're writing a screenplay and you're going, this screenplay needs some fire. All right, let me call up this voice that I know is there, that's angry all the time. Let's call that guy. Or whatever it might, however you want to categorize, that's up to you. But it gives you this toolbox, right? And I actually took a course, and I haven't seen it lately, called the Emotional Toolbox. And she was awesome, and she was like kind of doing some of this stuff in terms of writing a screenplay. But it's like you've got this ability then to tap into things. It was a long time ago. Can't quite remember, but she had named for different emotions, and this is years ago. So, and actually, as a reader, one of my producers sent me through that, which was awesome. She was really engaged in wanting to make sure that the readers could help people. And so it was awesome training, helped me as a writer, helped me as a reader. And so she saw the benefits of that too. So when we think that producers aren't engaged, they absolutely are. They absolutely do want to find the project. They do want to find the actual characters. She did so much that she took us all through a training. So it's like she really did want us to come up with these. She wanted us to find the emotional meaning of these screenplays. She was very passionate about it. So, and she took her whole team, all of the readers. She had, at that point, I was doing some writing for that company, some reading, some development. I was kind of doing a lot at that point with that company, but she took everybody. She took readers that are just coming. She took like producers, like everybody. We all took it together. It was also really fun. And it was great because we could all kind of talk about, I got to know the other readers. One of the few times where I really did some kind of workshop situation with readers at another company. Often you would meet for meetings, but most of it's just online, so you don't meet. But she really wanted to do that, so we got together kind of conference style and did that. So really being able to, I would recommend watching this TED Talk because I think it might tap you into the idea of her journey. For one, it's just a beautiful journey. And it's also kind of awakening to me to the understanding of schizophrenia, of voices, of how we might treat mental illness and anyone in our lives that might be suffering from some kind of mental illness, how we can it can kind of play into depression, and how we don't know. I mean, you think about all of the voices we've just talked about here and people have shared and everything. Marcy, case in your sunshine, what's in the box? That reading of that line is one of my favorite readings, favorite line. There's so many ways he could have done that, and that he did it in a knee buckling, defeated way. It could have been, he could have picked the angry cop, but he picked the most vulnerable, which is so beautiful. So it's really funny in Irish accent though. But that became the line of that movie, right? It's great actor. Anyway, but if you can get in touch with all of those things, I think we'll be better humans to each other. I think we'll have a better understanding that when you see someone post something ridiculous, which you're seeing, I'm sure, that you don't agree with, you can see beyond it a little bit, to see the fear, pain, frustration, and also self-criticism. If someone's being rude or mean to you, or rude or mean in a post or whatever, chances are, and I really feel like bullies for sure, they are just, they're craving love, like that they're coming from a place of love. And actually I just saw a really amazing little doc of J.K. Simmons, and he says that he starts searching his characters from a place of love, and he plays so many angry characters, right? And so especially when they're angry, he starts from what do they love, because it's only in finding what you really love that then you can flip it to what you will defend it with all of your might, and that can turn into hate. And so like his character Fletcher in Whiplash loves music so much that you are attacking music when you are playing it poorly, right? It's so genius. So it's like when you are able to find where these voices are sitting, then you're able to take the next step into what will these voices defend, and what will they do to protect themselves. And so when you see someone communicating in a less than desirable way, you'll be able to see that the little tip of this is all you're seeing is sort of an angry spout underneath a well of pain, frustration, probably not feeling heard. And then as we always say, there's the subtext, and then here's the real gold. So you'll see like, oh, they're upset because they feel disenfranchised, or they feel they've been somehow put upon. And then under here, that's where the real pain is of just being held down and being oppressed maybe, or being so many things, unworthiness, lack of belonging. There's so much. Here's where the longing and the pain. And if we can, as the person with ourselves, try to tap in and soothe some of this with ourselves and with each other, that's when the world will be a better place. The more that we can, instead of just looking at this little spout and getting angry about it, or even looking at this and getting angry about it, if we can look at this and come down here to what is underneath these, that's where we can connect, because we all have that, and we all have learned ways to circumvent this. And so if we can, that's the beating heart. And so if we can find that thing, it's going to make this depth of storytelling that's just so much more amazing. And this is where we listen to each other, we stick up for each other, we find the common ground underneath all of this. So I really, really just love the idea of like, can we keep digging? Just like we talk of the look method, we want to keep looking and keep looking. And I'm studying, I'm not going to go too much in it now because I'm studying a lot right now, brain and society and all kinds of things, because I really do want to come from a place of as much knowledge and openness to learning as I can. So I'm going to start here, and as you'll see, I'm going to continue to get even deeper and deeper into this, because I think it does make everything so much better, and it does make everything so much more relatable. And as we move forward, the old way of storytelling, it's just not going to fly. We are becoming so much more in tune to the nuances of human behavior and anger and emotion and all of that. The more we can understand the human psyche, I think, and our brains and how we protect ourselves and just how we're treating ourselves, the more we can live in a solid place that then opens us up to help others create stories that then will help all those people that are only living in, there's so many people on boats on the top of the water that are seeing the little tips and going, and they're fighting the little tips. And there's so many people just rowing their little boat and they're just not willing or able or whatever it is. I'm not sure. Their boat has to get capsized before they can even start to begin to get down into the depths. And so if we can kind of snorkel, it's a whole metaphor I wasn't going into, but it's a good one. If we could do some deep sea diving and then come up with some gems to help all the people in their little uptight boats, then maybe we can help calm the sea. So this is really a good one. I'll have to remember this, but it really does, right? You see how it makes so much sense to me. And I love that idea of us, even though we're readers, we're reading screenplays, but we're readers, we're reading screenplays. And people writing screenplays, people writing anything, we are the narrators of our culture. What are we going to do with that power? You have that power as a writer, as a reader, as someone in this group. So what are we going to do with that? Take this responsibility. Have fun with it. Open up get the Partridge Family bus, open it all up, or whatever bus you want to ride, whatever your mode of, I don't even want to I want it to be as open and whatever. That's my silly 70s childhood. Whatever your thing is, let's open it up to be whatever your thing is and invite all those folks into your world and take them with you. Talk to them. Give them a voice at the table. They've earned it. They deserve it. So good. So good. So that's what we have for today. I hope it's helpful. I love that. Put that little emoji up. Scuba would be good. Scuba's the second level. You're going to have to put air tank on for way down there though. You're going to need that mask for sure. You're going to need that mask to get at that lower level. So, yeah, totally can't swim. We got you. Remember this. We'll you put little ropes on, it'll be fine. We're all in there together. Yeah, I think it does help. I'm sorry, I don't know. It says Facebook user with you think that it's helping us get our feelings out and deal with them being able to make us better. I think that's the key, right? Yeah, and Doug's saying villains are not necessarily, the best villains are just, it's from their own justifiable POV. They don't come up and think well, what evil thing can I do today? They're coming from a place of, I'm going to fight for what I love, even if it is not what you love. Good. Oh, and here, this perfect quote ended on, you want to write right now. That's exactly, yay. That makes me very happy. So go write. All right. And we will see you next week. Same bad channel, right? Yeah, same bad channel. All right, you guys, have a good one. Enjoy. Tell me about your voices next time. Let them out. We'll talk to you soon.